Professor Lewis,
Dr. Freud.
I've given you up for lost. Yoffie is my personal assistant.
Really?
Well, if a patient is calm, Yoffie always stretches out at my feet. But if a patient is agitated, Yoffie stands at my side.
What should I make of his running away at the sight of me?
Ah, well, he's also a fanatic about punctuality.
Well, you have a wonderful home.
My daughter Anna tried her best to replicate our home in Vienna. Forgive me, but why would you come here to see me if you disagree so passionately with my views?
To make you realize that you're wrong.
Well done. Good.
You've insisted all your lives that the very concept of God is ludicrous.
Yes. Why someone of your supreme intellect would suddenly abandon truth and then embrace a ludicrous dream, an insidious lie?
Well, I wholeheartedly disagree.
Well, of course you disagree. You have to disagree. Otherwise, the entire structure of your childish faith would collapse into rubble.
Why does religion make room for science, but science refuses to make room for religion?
Oh, please, you're breaking my heart. Because they hide behind their ignorance. You hide behind your ignorance.
I think that you're afraid to feel emotions at all.
Is that your final diagnosis? Fascinating.
I don't know.
You don't know? Well, finally, we're making progress.
You lie to yourself, thinking that you can control death, the way you control your world and your daughter.
Anna's dedicated to the science.
Is she seeing someone?
She has no time for relationships.
I'm worried about my father. He has no one.
There must be someone.
Me.
That's my girl.
Truth is, you're terrified.
We're all terrified. See, you bury your doubts, you bury your memories of the war. But at the core of your being, we're all cowards before death.
Hi everyone, Simon Foster here from Screen Watching. Few recent films engage the heart and the mind like Freud's Last Session. It imagines a meeting between two of the great minds of the 20th century, psychoanalyst and committed atheist Sigmund Freud in the final days of his extraordinary life, and the devoutly religious young Professor C.S. Lewis, still to author his Christ parable, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Faith, memory, legacy, belief, and the acting might of one Sir Anthony Hopkins. There's a lot to unpack here. Who better to give us insight than director Matt Brown, who joins us now. Matt, thank you so much.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Mate, let's with a film like this, let's dive straight in. What were the key themes that piqued your intellect, that drew you into this material?
Well, I guess, I had a lot of loss in my life at different times, so I've thought about mortality quite a bit, and I think the themes surrounding mortality were a big draw, aside from the intellectual greats of Freud and Lewis. I mean, in fact, they were probably worked against it for me in the sense that my father's a psychiatrist, so I was a little reticent, to jump into that pond. But yeah, I think it was the themes around mortality and just the idea that our society right now is so polarized and has been for so long. I mean, I started this 6 years ago, the journey with this. And at the time I thought, wow, how amazing just to read something that the people actually want to listen to one another and have intellectual curiosity and actually can consider a different point of view and agree to not agree and actually like each other at the end of it. To me was a novel idea. And then you cut to today and it's that on steroids. And I mean, people are just insane. So I thought it was almost like a public service to, to make a film that forced people to listen for a minute and actually not choose a side. But that's, it's a tricky thing in and of itself because people want you to pick a side and lambast the other one. But that wasn't the film I had any interest in making. So.
No, and we're glad you didn't, because it's the way those themes are and those points of view are tackled in this film make for such an engaging story. You mentioned there you grew up in a home with a father who was a psychiatrist. Did you bring very firm beliefs to this project? And I guess counter to that, were there any long-held beliefs and views that shifted over the course of the production?
Interesting. No, not really. I mean, Freud to me was always a bunch of books on the shelf and this character that would be, I don't know, I guess I probably saw him more as he would be in the play, like a very stern kind of a character. And I guess, you know, it was interesting because I mean, I don't want to be too long-winded, but like, you know, in the beginning, I remember saying to Ben Smith, or the cinematographer, I was like, we were talking about the look, and I was saying, you know, I remember going into my dad's office, and it was always sort of dark, and it was sort of this space in between space and time or something. I don't know, but it was always had a very light was just drifting in and out, and I don't know. There's something about Freud. I guess maybe I just didn't like, probably because of that and my own Freudian thing I had to work out. But what I learned from the film, and really in talking to my father about Freud, was that Freud had this great sense of humor, which I didn't know anything about, and that he was so intellectually curious. And I think I probably fell into the camp, like many people, thinking, well, Freud's ideas are so yesterday and so backwards, and just, but you know, not taking into consideration the fact that this was, you know, when it was, and that the Freud that my dad was describing is somebody that would rip apart his own ideas when he realized they were wrong and go right on to the next new idea, and that he was always pushing boundaries and always moving forward, and is, yes, sure, some of his ideas are not probably what we want to think of today, but that's not who the man was. The man was forward thinking, constantly challenging himself, and I love that about him, the intellectual curiosity, and I love that about Lewis as well, actually. So yeah, I suppose it's funny. You make a film, and then certain things, you look back on it, and the things that attract you to your own work probably are different in the end than they were in the beginning. What you were thinking the nugget of that film was, and what really was it in the end. And I'm not sure I could have told you totally. And to this point now, I know it's about listening. You know, this film is about
Yeah.
listening. It's one of the hardest things to do in life, is to listen to another person and really see them and really listen and be present. And it was funny because that was something I had to talk to Matthew Goode about in his approach to the character, because you know, you want to see Lewis yell back at times, and he doesn't, because
Mm.
as Matthew would say, he's respectful. He's not going to do that with somebody that he has respect for and that is of a certain stature, and he's a kind man, and he wouldn't do that even if he strongly disagreed. And
Sure.
um, so you see so much of this play out in the listening. And I think in many ways, the audience has to listen because they're sort of forced by the nature of the story, whether it's through the flashbacks and fantasies, to just slow down and not be in that TikTok sort of YouTube, everything by the second. You know, this is going to make you have to look at a film that is a little passe by our cinema society standards today, and give it a chance. And if you do, I think you can really hopefully glean something from it.
Oh, absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
interesting, you know, but it's interesting. I mean, because, you know, going into it, I would have, you know, I didn't know it was about listening.
I'm going to come back to Mr. Hopkins. I want to talk about, you raised Matthew Goode, who I think is one of the great character actors trapped in a leading man's body, in my view, because
Oh, you're so right.
he embodies a certain type of English acting presence, and I sort of compare him to Tom Courtenay in many ways, a young Tom Courtenay. He's got that same sort of quality about him. Tell us what we don't know about Matthew Goode and what he captured most accurately about your C.S. Lewis.
Well, Matthew's somebody that is so smart. Like, he's just so smart and so fast. Um, like his processing speeds really, it's a little ridiculous. So you have to kind of, in this, we had to say, listen, the Lewis we're going to do here is you're going to really slow it down. You got to be present. And obviously I just said listening, but like really it's kind of a Zen approach to the whole thing. And that was, I think, a big challenge. And it was in the speech, it was in everything that he did, the mannerisms. And it allows you in this situation to kind of watch the responses that you would almost wanted to hear play out on his face. It's like you're watching a movie within a movie when you watch his performance. And it's a truly great performance. Opposite one of the greatest living actors, but he's willing to not go and chew the scenery. He's willing to, he's really, it's a lot of work to be present and really listen. And I've worked with other actors, and I know that's not easy. It's just, it's something some people have a natural ability to do. it's still, it's a tremendous amount of work. He's constantly working in this. So I think the thing that people wouldn't know is that how hard he is working in this, and he makes it look just seamless, and it helps everything. It's just
Let's talk about his scene partner at 85, I guess, when you were shooting, or 84. Sir Anthony has a wealth of existential insight, I guess you could say. Yes, as an actor, of course, his profession sort of allows for that, but also just as a human being. During the shoot, did he open up with you to any great extent on the themes that you explore in the film? Was the whole shoot an experience, a lesson in Hopkins' wisdom?
One of the most enlightening, incredible educational experiences of my life. Really, I had no idea what I was getting into. He is so creatively generous. When he first said yes to the film, we began basically a year of correspondence and communication about this. And I think he was attracted to the questions of mortality as he's looking at it in his own life at this point, and what he could bring to it, just as you were suggesting. And he drew from everything from the years he was alive during World War II. He has memories, he has thoughts of, drawing on relationships with his own father, with his family and friends, and he brought everything to it. And to allow me into his process as an actor about how he wants to work through the script and work through the character development was just very, very special. The thing with Hopkins is that he brings everybody's A game as well.
Yeah.
And it's something else I've learned. It's going to be a blessing and a curse, because I know now when I do another film and I don't have Hopkins, your crew will behave a certain way, but when you have Hopkins, it starts at the top, and it starts with him, and the level of respect. I mean, you could have heard a penny drop on our set. I mean, it was so quiet and respectful. It was amazing. And it allowed the space for Hopkins at 85 to really be able to feel like he could fall down and get back up and be in a safe space. And Matthew's so kind and generous as well, that we really were able to work out these scenes that we shot so fast. I mean, it was like 2 weeks, all that dialogue.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it was a lot. Yeah.
I found it fascinating that the narrative takes place at a very specific moment in Britain's history, when World War II came to the people. Given the meeting is a fictional event, and I guess chronologically, because of Freud's, close to passing, it had to be kind of set around there. But why was it pertinent to set it at that moment in time? Did it play into your storytelling?
Well, I mean, it came to me that way, so I just sort of always accepted it. But I mean, to me, I guess the advantage of it is that, I was drawn to the idea of a man who's looking at his imminent death, for one. But two, it's just the themes today. I mean, my goodness, you have 2 wars going on in the world right now, and they're not so dissimilar to what they're dealing with at that time. I mean, the parallels are incredible. So it automatically sort of makes this a bit timely. Which I think is fascinating. And so if I had to do it again and I was making it all up, I probably would set it right down anyway.
Sure. You've raised that point a couple of times, and it brings me to my last question that I've prepared. And with your last film, The Man Who Knew Infinity, and now Freud's Last Session, you're putting a very human face on some of the great intellectuals of the last century. And in the modern political climate, as you've mentioned, intellect maybe isn't as revered as it should be. Are you on a mission of sorts to bring back intelligence as a valuable resource?
I don't know, maybe just human kindness.
Yeah, that'd be nice too.
No, I mean, I don't know. I guess I've always been drawn to historical, just to fiction. I mean, historical fiction. I didn't mean to do this movie next, but it happened the way it happened. I like stories that go deep, I guess. Although I also like really fun other crazy stuff too. So I mean, I'm doing my next film is the polar opposite of this. It's about a food taster in the court of King Louis XVI. It's wild and like all food and love and sex and just embracing some joy for a moment. I need a time out from the intellect and go maybe more just into the heart. But now, and I'll come back and I'll do something else, that definitely will be more intellectual. I'm writing a script right now about something that's pretty heavy on the mind too. I don't know. just what you're interested in, you know.
Yeah.
These films are so hard to make. It's like, if you're going to do it, you better be passionate about it. And to me, to be passionate means to be intellectually curious about the thing that I'm working on. You know,
And
so
that comes across, and that absolutely comes across in the work you do, the films you've made, and especially Freud's Last Session is yes, wonderfully entertaining, but also really engaging for the mind as well. So Freud's
Thank
Last
you.
Session is in Australian cinemas from April 18. Check cinema and streaming guides in your territories around the world. So Matt Brown, thank you so much for joining us on
really
Screen
appreciate it.
Watching, and thank you so much for a terrific movie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and having me on.